'Tis the season, my dear loves. It is the season of Halloween, and I am going to show you the Spirit Halloween tarot deck that I acquired while I was traveling in the USA. If you are not familiar with Spirit Halloween stores, they are stores that open in America about in September, shortly before October, basically shortly before Halloween. And they sell a bunch of Halloween garbage, to be honest, like costumes, decorations, everything. And since last year, at least, they've been carrying this tarot deck that we are going to look at. It says, warning, for novelty purposes only. We're not going to stick to that, of course, because we're bad, we're evil. But yes, they have been carrying this tarot deck. I first learned of it last year. Since I do not live in the USA, I was pretty sad that I couldn't get it because it's only $7 and it's supposedly very good. So I want to look at it with you and I want to see whether it actually lives up to the hype that some people have been spreading, that it is actually a pretty good deck. So in this video, I am going to open it up. I will show you a lot of close-ups. Every card will be shown as a close-up, and I'm going to talk about some of them, what I think of the imagery and of the symbolism of the card. So get a tea. This might be a long video. We have 78 cards to get through, and I'm going to introduce this deck first of all. So it is not a gimmicky deck. I was surprised how good it actually is, how good the artwork is. And it's kind of like the Game of Thrones tarot deck that I unboxed more than a year ago, where I was thinking it was going to be gimmicky and cheap, but it's actually very, very good. And we're going to dive into the meanings to see. And even if the meanings aren't necessarily classical at all times, it is a very interesting take, and I feel like the cards have a lot of potential if you don't necessarily try to push the Rider-Waite-Smith system on them. You can still use them very, very well. It basically has a mix of mythical entities, deities, and beings from stories that are sometimes horror related, but sometimes also simply, you know, mythical and magical and fictional. So I think that is something that I very much like about this deck, that it's not just like a horror deck, like, oh, it's Halloween, let's make every card scary. It has fairies, it has unicorns, as you will see. It has all of that. It has a very pretty tea stain look, and it also has very good cardstock. This is the backs. This is the kind of tea stain look that the cards have. You will see close-ups in just a second. And basically, it's pretty legit. It's pretty legit. The only thing that I don't like is that they gave every card astrological signs, including the major arcana. And it's quite interesting because usually the major arcana is a mix of zodiac signs and planets that are associated with the major arcana cards. For example, the Empress is Venus, or the Chariot is Cancer. And it makes sense that way, but in this deck, they just put astrological signs and no planets anywhere on the cards. So it's not traditional in that sense either, but I think that also adds a dimension, and we shouldn't just push it away just because it's a cheap deck. I think it is interesting to see why they chose certain zodiac signs for certain cards. And I'm sure there is a system in which it makes sense. So it's another level on which you can engage with the cards. There is no manual whatsoever. It is just the deck, just 78 cards, and a very well-made box, to be honest. So that's what we're working with here. We'll take a closer look at the deck now. I will talk about some of my favorite cards a little more, and at the end of the video, I will be back to tell you about my verdict and how I like the deck as a whole, how I see its potential. So let me know which card meanings you like, which card meanings you find fitting, which ones you find weird. I would really like your input because this is by no means a traditional deck in the minor arcana. The major arcana is a bit more traditional, but the minor arcana is just out there. So let's see. All right, so here we are now with the close-up of this deck. As I said, for novelty purposes only, distributed by Spirit Halloween. The box is very sturdy, very nice. And the cardstock, I will also show you in just a second, is pretty decent, Also, there is a hair in this box. Let me pull that out. That was my hair, not some other person's hair. Don't worry. So I'm just going to go through the cards here, take them out. These are the backs. They just have some random zodiac signs: Aquarius, Sagittarius, Pisces, the symbol for the sun, the symbol for the moon. Why those 3 zodiac signs, I'm not sure. I think it's just random chance, essentially. So now we are going to take a look at each card. The first card that we have is the Fool, and I honestly really like this one because it is a different take than I've ever seen in any of my decks. He's playing with tarot cards. He is kind of self-aware. The deck is self-aware, and he is using his talents, his presence to make money, essentially. So I feel like this Fool is more about resourcefulness rather than blind daring or new beginnings. And I also feel like it might speak to small business owners precisely because it is about someone making money with a talent or with a presence in this world. What I also like is that he holds these cards because he is the person who goes through the deck. If you follow the theory of the Fool's journey, the Fool is the card that is the 0 and the 22, the beginning and the end of the major arcana. So I think it is quite meaningful that he's playing with the cards here and kind of starting his journey, engaging with the cards. We have the Magician, Warlock. I'm not going to talk about each card so long, otherwise we'll be here for hours. The High Priestess, though, is another one of those cards that makes it feel sort of self-aware. And she is just using the tarot deck as a tool for depth, as a tool for that insight that the High Priestess is associated with. We have Kali as the Empress. The Emperor, Sphinx. The Hierophant is a voodoo warlock. And here you can also see the astrological signs being portrayed rather than planets for some of these cards. The Lovers is Succubus. I like this one because it has a more specific meaning. It's a little bit more about sexuality, especially female sexuality, and about taboos. And I very much appreciate that. The Chariot, some of you know that the Chariot is a very meaningful card for me, and I feel like with this deck they have a very interesting idea because the core meaning of the Chariot to me is the marriage, the combination between willpower and action, and having the human top half with the willpower, with the planning, with the intentions, and then the bottom half with the horse as a symbol for execution and action. I quite enjoy that, definitely. And then we have the Justice card, which is the 8 in this deck, just like in the Thoth Tarot or Crowley Tarot. Rather than in the Rider-Waite-Smith, the 8 would be Strength. It's interesting that it's Valkyries because generally whenever I see Valkyries as a figure in decks, they are usually the Judgment card. So card 20 because they transport people or choose people to transport them to Valhalla, essentially. So it's kind of like a higher calling, like an angel. So it's interesting that it is Justice here. Then we have the Hermit as the Yeti, quite adorable. The Wheel of Fortune as the Inquisitor. That one is a bit weird for me. I don't like it all that much. Let me know what you think. Then as 11, we have Strength. As the Hanged Man, we have Imp. And as Death, we have this wonderful cloaked figure on a boat. I haven't seen that a lot in tarot decks, that death is on a boat, and I like it very much because this could be the river Styx, and he sort of has more of the implication of a psychopomp, you know, leading you into the underworld, and I quite enjoy that about this card. Temperance as the sea nymph, the devil as a good old demon. This deck has a lot of sigil, occult-esque symbols in it, like on his forehead, right here in the background, that I do not believe have a lot of meaning. I mean, here you can see some planetary symbols in between, but then I think a lot of it is just occult-looking gibberish for flavor. The tower as gargoyle. I like this very much. The tower, of course, traditionally is about release of energy, which can be quite dramatic and come with quite a sudden change. And with the gargoyle, you know, in the myth, usually they are petrified and then come to life. So I feel like it's sort of similar to the tower moment, where there's just this moment that changes you, that brings you to life or ruins you in a way, but you don't know yet that it's good for you. So the petrified gargoyle coming to life is sort of a good metaphor for that. Tooth Fairy as the star, I think, is absolutely brilliant. I think this is my favorite card because the star is all about healing traditionally. And yes, there is nothing better than having that annoying loose tooth feeling going away because finally it falls out, which can be a tower moment as well. And then you put it under your pillow and you get a gift for it. I don't know where all in the world this tradition is a thing. It definitely is where I live. And I think it's quite a good metaphor for healing. Then we have the moon with the werewolf. I like that it has the two hands here, sort of showing that it is you facing the werewolf, facing a fear, facing a darker aspect of you that you don't want to see. We have the sun as a phoenix, judgment as Cerberus, the gatekeeper, and the world as Ouroboros, with more of those occult sigil-looking things that probably don't really have a meaning. Up here, obviously, we have some sacred geometry with some planetary symbols in it, so that at least makes sense. Then we have the Ace of Cups, a giant whale. The Two of Cups, I adore this card because usually, you know, it's a man and a woman, but with this unicorn, I feel like it's a lot more about self-love. It is said mythologically that unicorns only come to people who are virgins, maidens, you know. I like to interpret it more as pure souls, where you are at peace with yourself, you have a self-loving relationship with yourself rather than being a literal virgin. And I think that this gives the Two of Cups a very beautiful meaning of self-love and being in tune with yourself, and thus being able to access the power of that unicorn. Three of Cups is the witch. Well, who doesn't like to see a witch, right? Four of Cups is a ghoul, just perching on a flooded grave. Five of Cups is a mermaid. What I find very interesting about this card is that she looks like she is singing. I feel like she kind of is a siren more than a mermaid in my mind. And the Five of Cups, I feel, is sometimes about toxic ways of coping with grief, of coping with sadness. And in this specific case, luring other people to their deaths because you're alone, because you're anxious, because you're lonely, that is quite toxic, I would say. So I enjoy this Five of Cups. The Six of Cups is Jenny Green Teeth. So yeah, I'm not sure why they spelled it with a G. Usually it's spelled with a J, and it is essentially a story that is supposed to keep children away from the water, especially when there is duckweed on the water, I believe it is called. You know, that stuff that makes it look like you can walk on it, and then children fall into it and possibly die, and then this myth is supposed to keep them from walking on the water. The Seven of Cups, Nessie, I like this one very, very much. It is all about dreaming of what doesn't exist, daring to believe, daring to dream. Very nice. And the Eight of Cups, I know that I'm kind of trying to force the classical Rider-Waite-Smith meaning on these, but it is cool because, you know, pirates do have this romanticized notion of leaving home, being self-sufficient, taking what you want. And I quite enjoy that about the Eight of Cups because that is traditionally about moving on, finding new challenges. Nine of Cups is the Kraken. 10 of Cups is Leviathan. Page of Cups is a satyr. Quite fitting. I think the satyr would have been fitting as the Knight of Cups as well, kind of as the bringer of bliss and of ecstasy. Then we have the Queen of Cups, Gorgon. This one doesn't make obvious sense to me at first glance. If you have an idea about it, let me know. King of Cups, Orcs. Yeah, this one, not very fitting. I would see this as the King of Wands, if anything, because, you know, orcs are generally killers who take what they want through force, and that's not very King of Cups. But it has a meaning, it has a symbolism, and we can work with that intuitively. Ace of Wands, Salamander, very classical. Two of Wands, Cyclopses, making a sword. I like that a lot, equipping yourself for battles to come. Three of Wands, Brownie. Four of Wands, Fairy. Good example of the fact that not all cards in this deck are scary. Five of Wands, Chimera. I enjoy this one because the Five of Wands is about external and internal battles, and seeing the Chimera as an amalgamation of different monsters, of violent feelings, essentially. It's a nice metaphor for the Five of Wands. Six of Wands, Golem. This Golem is adorable. Look at its little face. Seven of Wands is a mummy. Eight of Wands is the Hydra, of course, very fitting. 8 heads, uncontrollable energies, uncontrollable circumstances. 9 of Wands, pumpkin head. I don't know if there's a big like mythology behind pumpkin heads. Might be an American thing that I am not acquainted with. School me on it if you know. 10 of Wands is a dragon. Fitting. I also quite like dragons in the pentacle suits though, because they, you know, hoard gold, hoard money. So the dragons fit very well into pentacles. Page of Wands is the necromancer. Knight of Wands is Hanuman. This one is another one that I'm a bit doubtful of because Hanuman is more about celibacy and complete devotion. I see the complete devotion aspect, but celibacy for the Knight of Wands, I'm not so sure. Queen of Wands, Lilith, of course, who doesn't love her? I think it's super fitting. It's awesome that it is about equality, about lust, about the freedom of female sexuality, all the good things that Lilith stands for and that the Queen of Wands also stands for. King of Wands, Anubis, the King of Death. Ace of Swords, Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl? I'm not sure how to say it. Two of Swords, Ghost. I enjoy this one very much because if you see it as a metaphor for your mind, this broken down house is essentially your mind, and then you are facing the ghosts within as you try to make a decision, because the Two of Swords is very often about withdrawing to make decisions and withdrawing into a house like this and trying to make a decision and facing ghosts. It's a whole feeling. I like it. Then with the Three of Swords, we have aliens. This one stumps me a little bit as well. Four of Swords, vampire. I suppose it makes sense because generally the Four of Swords is about rest. So, well, he's not quite resting in peace, but he's resting somehow. Five of Swords is angels. Let me know if you like in-depth looks at decks like this, like in-depth walkthroughs, because I'm never so sure about whether this is boring. The Six of Swords is Harpy. Well, harpies in Greek mythology are usually about revenge. So, I'm not quite sure how I see it with the Six of Swords, which is more about moving on and leaving old things behind. But it has a strong symbolic meaning that I can work with, definitely. Seven of Swords, cannibal, like that one. Eight of Swords, Pegasus. What a kitschy, kitschy picture. But you can't hate it, can you? It's a flying horse, right? And a rainbow. Nine of Swords, Basilisk. I like that you have the mirror as the metaphor here because you know you cannot look a basilisk in the eye. You will get petrified, so you need a mirror in order to look at it. And the Nine of Swords traditionally being about facing inner fears, facing inner demons. I think that is a very fitting symbol for the Nine of Swords. 10 of Swords, Griffin, very air related. Page of Swords, Headless Horseman. Interesting choice considering that usually the swords are about the head, the mind, the intellect, thinking. Knight of Swords, Barbarian. Queen of Swords, Amazon. I think this one is supremely fitting because the Queen of Swords is associated with defending her own heart and defending the ones she loves very fiercely. And that is true of Amazons, at least in the myth, where they live in tribes. Basically, no outsider has access to them unless they let them. And they fiercely defend themselves and defend the other women in the tribe. So I think that's an amazing picture. King of Swords, Viking. Ace of Pentacles, Mandragora. I enjoy that one. I love Mandragoras. And once again, here you have these symbols, some of them planetary symbols, some of them probably just gibberish. Two of Pentacles, Elf. Three of Pentacles, Dwarf. So here we see very untraditional meanings for these pentacles. Four of Pentacles, Echidna, the mother of monsters. Quite interesting. She could have been the Queen of Pentacles as well, I feel like. Five of Pentacles, a shaman. I like that because traditionally in the Five of Pentacles, you have the church as a symbol of refuge, a symbol of, hey, you have support, you just got to find it. And with shamans as the center of their communities, basically the spiritual heart of the people that they support and their tribe, I think it is very fitting to have them as the Five of Pentacles, as a reminder that there is not just physical help, but also spiritual help out there for us. Six of Pentacles, Arachne. Seven of Pentacles, Gremlins. Wait, why is the Queen? Sorry, the Queen got mixed in. We'll get to you in a second. Eight of Pentacles, a zombie. Nine of Pentacles, Frankenstein. I like that. I feel like it would have been a good 10 as well because the 10 of Pentacles very much is about legacy for me. The Nine of Pentacles as well. It's kind of looking upon what you've created, so I enjoy it. 10 of Pentacles, the Minotaur. Page of Pentacles, Baron Samedi. This is usually Samedi, Samedi. So I'm not quite sure what happened there, why they made it Samodi. Knight of Pentacles is the warrior. And then the very beautiful Queen of Pentacles as the Dryad. and the King of Pentacles as a leprechaun. So it's time for my final verdict. I have to say personally, I cannot force the classical meanings on this deck. It is simply a bit more iconic. It's a bit more out there than a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and that is absolutely fine. I see a lot of potential in engaging very deeply with the mythical beings and the deities in this deck, and I think that it just has an immense symbolic potential when you work with these cards. You can also learn about the mythical beings. I Googled some of them before I made this video to sort of learn what they are about, and that is why I feel this deck is a very intuitive one. It is not one that you can go by the book with. You will have to rely on your own intuition and your own associations and your knowledge about these mythical creatures and deities, and that is what makes it so interesting to me. So I actually very much like this deck and would recommend it if you are into non-classical decks and mythology and all of that good narration that we have passed down through the centuries. It's very, very interesting. The stores are still open, so you can probably still get it, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know. I'm never sure about these very long deck videos. I will put links to other deck videos below. Also a link to my Patreon if you want to join that. I'd be very happy if you subscribe to me and become a part of my Discord domain. Wait, why did I say Discord? YouTube domain. I don't have a Discord. Anyways, I hope that you have the best of days, the best of weeks, and I will see you very, very soon.